I'm Freddie Bryant, and this is Coffee Talk.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Kim Perlak. I'm the chair of the guitar department at Berklee College of Music, and welcome to another Coffee Talk. We've got Cheryl Bailey as usual. Hey, Cheryl.
Coffee cheers.
Cheers to you. And our senior coordinator, Ian Steed, is with us again. Hey, Ian.
Hey, everybody.
And our guest today is Professor Freddie Bryant. Hey, Freddie. How are you?
How you doing? I'm good.
Good. Freddie, are you drinking coffee? How do you take it?
I am drinking coffee. I got my French press. It's pretty dark. It's like I don't follow any recipes, and I certainly boiled my water.
You got a spoon there. Like, is that just for like
You
comfort?
know,
What are
it's
you gonna
because I'm a wimp
do?
and I have half and half and sugar. Sugar.
Ooh.
Sugar baby. That's what I'm talking about. You
So
know,
I'm looking at the background there. Where are you in the world? Are you on the island?
I am on the island.
Oh, and if you're listening on the podcast, he just opened the window and there's a palm tree right there.
But it's backlighting, so
That's not a bad view. Not a
no,
bad view.
no, I see it over that way, and it's great. It's been a pleasure and just an expected blessing to be able to be in this place and at the same time teach all these amazing students.
Incredible. So for people who haven't been hanging around in our meetings and stuff, Freddie went down to the Caribbean and got kind of stuck there in the beginning of the pandemic, and then it's become kind of a second home for you this
Yeah,
whole year and a half.
yep, yep. It was a really interesting coincidence because we bought the tickets in 2019 in November, and it was just for spring break. We came down, and luckily we have a place that we rent out, and of course nobody who wants to rent it, and so so it's like it's the same bills we'd pay no matter where we'd be, still have to pay the expenses, and anyway, it's just been great because I mean I've been inspired by my students all around the world. It's been a complete international experiment and adventure. Like having students taking their guitar lessons at 3 in the morning in their car in Japan because their parents you know you know they can't, and then even playing at home but without a mic, without an amplifier or something like that. I mean, it's just been amazing, and the dedication that some of these students, all of them actually, did to actually study online, like really starting at 11 and ending at 5 or 6 in the morning. It's just kind of mind-boggling. Actually, that's how I feel right now because I spent a whole night writing music. So that's what I've been doing for this year. I've been writing music. I have a grant from the Chamber Music of America's New Jazz Works grant for a nonette with a great group. And so actually last night, that's why I need the coffee, because even with the cream and the sugar, it's strong enough that it's going to, you know, keep me awake for this wonderful coffee talk.
That's great. So I have two questions about what you just said, and I'm going to start with the creative one first because I think people always say it's something people always say. Well, if I could just go to a tropical island, I'd be inspired. And if I could live there for like a year, think of all the amazing creative things I did. And then you ended up really living on a tropical island for a year. And then you had this amazing grant and you've been composing. Are there a few specific things you think that happened for you creatively that might not have happened in a different place?
Whoa, in a different place. Well, first of all, I did this really nice concert for the Miami International Guitar Festival, the Mesut Ozgen one in at FIU, Florida
Mhm.
International University. It's called Guitart, Git
That.
and Art together. Anyway, it doesn't sound that great when you say it very fast, but anyway, the Guitart classical, actually it's not, it's really a classical music guitar festival, but they opened it up. They had some Brazilians, they had some flamenco people, and they had one or two guys playing jazz like me, and I started out with some classical music. Anyway, that wouldn't have happened the way it happened, because where I had to actually pre-record the concert.
Mhm.
So I was looking for a church, and I just didn't know the right people. I went to a church and it didn't have the right vibe, believe it or not. It was carpeted and it was really weird. But I found somebody who hooked me up in a villa. And so the first set of music is in a villa, and then the second set of music is in the lobby of the Sotheby's, where the guy who set me up with the villa, and the third set of music is in a tropical garden outside. So I just had to deal with the mosquitoes and all that kind of stuff. But other than that, it was great. I really had to look at the weather report for the wind, because it was really, I mean, really, really, really concerning because you know, it's just not good unless you want sound effects. But
Right?
anyway,
Yeah.
so that happened, and then on the technical side, I actually did two camera shoot with my camera, my phone, and my wife's phone, and I'm proud of myself. I did a pretty good job. I would not have done that. I mean, I've tried so many times and failed so many times in the past, to
Mm.
something. And that was a big project, an hour's worth of music. And then I did an hour Brazilian workshop, also on remote and pre recorded. And that one I'm even more proud of, because I had a student who was in New Jersey, and I did a lesson with him beforehand, and he taped himself. I taped myself. Then he sent me his files, and then I played on top of his track. So it sounded like we were playing duo. So if you go and search FIU Guitar Festival, Freddie Bryant Brazilian Workshop, you'll find it. And there are three places where I play with the guy, and actually I made it possible that people around the world could go to my Facebook page and download music, and then practice it with us, and actually play with us in real time on their own with the music. So it was it was a really interesting way of trying to get content to students.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of the second question I had for you was, you ended up in a situation very much like your students where, you went down to this place thinking you'd be there for a week or two, and you didn't have all your guitars and you didn't have all your equipment, and you were calling me saying like, hi, I don't have any of my music that I need, like who might have the music that I need to teach guitar sessions. And it's like you had to learn how to do new things, you had to learn how to adapt, you had to learn how to kind of scramble, and then we couldn't mail you anything because the mail had stopped. We'd do everything on PDF and Google Drives and all these things.
Yeah,
So that was a cool story about that. And then but then you're also in this beautiful setting, right? So
yeah.
once you negotiate all of these issues and find these innovative, creative opportunities in them, what about being on the island itself? Like, did that inspire you in a way you imagined, or were there any surprises that came from just being in that beautiful place?
Well, I could say that for mental health, it's definitely been good, and this is during a time when stress is like was at the height of everything. Like in New York and around the world, and the fear of everything. Um, it uh, it it allowed me to every day. It just allowed me to, well, I don't know if there's something physical and scientific about it, but the ions in the salt water, or just walking on the sand, it has an effect. And I do teach a weekly Tai Chi lesson on Zoom from here. I've been talking with some of my students about various things like walking barefoot, you know, and feeling the ground, and so I was doing that the whole year, in midday, because I would go out early and then I'd come back, I'd swim and then come back and then get ready for the day. But just feeling the energy from the earth is really amazing, and it's. I would say that there's something that, as a New Yorker that has never lived anywhere else besides New York, except for college, and that was only 3 hours away, and I was always back every 2 3 weeks to see my girlfriend, my high school girlfriend. So I was in New York and Boston, New York and Boston. I was in Amherst College actually at that time. So, but what surprised me is that right now, after having spent a whole year here and more than a year here, I've noticed uh, changes, not like of well, yeah. I mean, the heat at the at 12 noon was different in October and November and December than it was in August and July, So, and uh, I remember when all the yellow butterflies hatched in April, you know what I mean? And then I was away this April and missed it, and I noticed that, there were no pelicans in Pelican Bay until like July, and they were there for a whole time. Now they're not, so it's pretty interesting. I'm noticing a lot of natural things that have made me feel um, more comfortable with life instead of the busy New York rat race. Because I guess we all know about that. You know what I mean? And so I mean, I'm feeling very grateful because I've noticed those subtle things.
That's great. I think that's interesting that you say that because we've known each other for a long time, and I think um, there's this part of your reputation as the guy who never sleeps and the guy who doesn't need sleep. With all the things that you do. But then there's also this reputation that you have, I think, is equally interesting, which is about balance, right? Like you do Tai Chi workshops, you do things that put yourself in nature. You're balancing city life with being like taking a break from that and being creative and taking care of your body and
Hmm.
also taking care of your instrument and composing. And you've had a very heavy academic experience in your undergrad and your grad school work. You have an honorary doctorate. You have, like you're balancing a lot of things. And then specific to our guitar department, you're one of the very few faculty who can balance a heavy, heavy classical guitar life and background with a jazz life that's equally intense and
I,
heavy.
I
Bring
got
them.
I got a real classical guitar. I should get it out.
Oh,
Uh,
that's so great.
Lars Franzen, my Yale School of Music buddy, who's the head of the classical department at Brooklyn College. Um, he noticed, because, well, I sent him an email and a few other people, because I did my classical concert that I was talking about with this guitar, with the cutaway
Oh,
and the pickup, but for the two venues that I mentioned that were inside, it was totally acoustic, just with the microphone. And then outside, I had a little bit of this AER amplifier, and my trusty little. Oh my gosh, I should show you this thing here. Um, it's the whoa. I don't want to destroy anything, but that little box on top of the amp
mhm.
is a miracle for.
Tell us what it is for the people who can't see it.
It is a Vintage Revolution Acoustic Box 2.
Mhm.
And it is made by a genius dude in Holland who's Italian, who, when he was getting it started, worked for NASA, and then he worked for the EU Space Science Center. Then he decided to retire and get a boring job in patents. He's a judge for a patents union, the EU patents union in Den Haag. So anyway, the guy's a genius, and his whole life is about collecting vintage pedals. And so he got tired of collecting them because they always, you get 5 pedals and 6 pedals, and then each time you plug it into another thing, it loses its signal, and it does it. So anyway, he's so like anal about it that he decided to make things like that. I have an analog multi-effects unit, and then I have that thing which makes the acoustic guitar sounds so beautiful. I'll just have to play just a couple of things. But anyway, I was mentioning that. Why was I mentioning? Because I didn't have a lot of things,
Right.
Yeah.
And Lars heard that comment, what you're playing on
Is that? Can you hear it?
there. Oh yeah.
So anyway, Lars, he had pity on me, and he has about a bunch of Kono guitars from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And so he laid one on me, and he said, "Just give me a jazz lesson every once in a while, and just hold on to it as long as you want." So, I mean, I should. Anyway,
No, that's amazing. I just want to say that you've mentioned a few names of people who are alumni of the Yale School of Music, classical.
Oh yeah.
So Lars and Masut, who ran FIU, and then you and I are both alums of that program. And I know, Bula Bula. And so yeah, you and I share two teachers in common, but specifically about Yale, what I've loved about that program is that there aren't very many people who go through it because it's really small.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone I've met that has gone through it is incredibly creative and does a million different things that you wouldn't think would connect. And sometimes people say, well, how does that work? And I think you just exemplified it when you suddenly become excited and you're like, but look at this and look at this and does this, and you find these connections with so many disparate things.
True.
And I think when a lot of students hear you and they think, well, like, wow, you really studied classical music deeply, and you really are a jazz musician, like a New York jazz musician, and you've brought a lot of these things together, and like you play these gorgeous classical instruments beautifully in a traditional classical style, but then you're also writing music and
Jazz box too.
and playing your jazz box. Like, what are some of the connecting points that you see stylistically? Like, for you, how does that work in your mind? Like, how did studying classical guitar inform what you're doing on jazz guitar and vice versa? Like, how do you think about these things coming together that seem so separate to people?
Well, I don't know. I think one of the main things is sound. And, with classical guitar, obviously you're talking about notes and playing the notes on the page. Okay, that's a big deal, especially when you're playing Bach. But really, it's your sound, and it's your interpretation. And so I spent a lot of time trying to get a good sound just with my fingers and no microphone. So this extension is the same thing. It's like it's helping me get a good sound because the piezo pickup sounds like this a lot of times, so that's why I have the box, and actually I used to travel with my amplifier overhead, this little amplifier, and now I can take this thing and I can hook it up to a mic stand, and when the sound man disappears for a cigarette and it's feeding back, I have total control, except for they have to put it, at 5 or something like that, like just even, flat, and then I can turn I can actually I have a microphone in it, or or both, and I can mix it, and then there's a parametric EQ. So all this stuff, the parametric, Phil DeFremery, our teacher, he wouldn't know what the heck a parametric EQ is, but and I don't either. But I know it does something, and there's some buttons on there that sound pretty good.
Well,
So
yeah, and he would be able to tell you, no, keep turning that one.
I
Don't
just
turn
keep
that
turning, till it sounds okay, and then I sometimes take a picture of it because when you put it in the bag, unfortunately, there are gremlins in the bag.
one. I hear you.
Turn
Yeah,
the knobs.
they
They're
do.
like they're like trying to make you get there 5 minutes before the gig. You sign you put plug in and then what? Wait, who turned the knobs? Yeah.
Hey, Cheryl, what are you thinking about at this point?
Um, well, I was wanted Freddie to talk about something that he shared with me a while back, and also because we just were talking to Amanda Monaco last week, and she was talking about how she makes students write things down.
Mm,
Write it from here, because this is really where the guitar is, right? It's up here,
She's
and this
doing
is
her head.
the job of this, and so she talked a lot about that. But I know I've had this conversation with you about this, like, with your students, that you want them to write everything down. So maybe you could tell us about that and how you started doing it, or what you feel is the value of that.
well, call me old fashioned, but I like to be able
You're
to.
old fashioned. You're old fashioned.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. You're old fashioned.
So anyway, I like to actually write things down and erase and cross out, and you see, there's arrows there. Nobody knows what the heck I'm talking about here, but it's
Showing,
actually.
for everyone who's listening and not watching, he's showing like his staff paper
Oh, that's right. There's
chart
people.
symbols, and I love that. I feel like I learned someone's personality when I see a chart written out in pencil like that. I love it.
Here are notes for the piece that I'm writing. It's basically poetry. I wrote 8 long poems and 8 haiku about the Upper West Side where I grew up, and right now I've written 8 pages of lyrics to 11 movements, and now I have 3 pages left, and it's just finally it's just feeling great. After 15 months of doing half of it, now I have a month to finish it, but it's fine because now I'm not as intimidated by all the words on the page. I hadn't really in my life written songs with words. I did write some music to poetry, setting poems, spoken word to music, but not singing. And I think my mother and my father, my mother the opera singer, my father the concert pianist, I think they're going to be proud of me up there. So I'm I'm just excited now. I because I stayed up all night. It was really because I just had to keep up with the energy. It wasn't. I don't like to stay up all night. I really don't. You know, you might think it, but it really it. I love sleep. And I'm a jazz musician. I stay up late. Cheryl, you stay up late?
Uh, Depends. I actually really love getting things done early in the morning, but I have, from being on the road, I have this really flexible clock. I could
Yeah,
be a night person just like that, or I
exactly.
could slip into morning. So
That's where I am, and unfortunately, I never really have the opportunity. Well, I do have it, but sometimes I keep myself up unnecessarily. But I would rather, and I have been working down here during the daytime, and it's really great because um, if I have energy when the sun goes down, I can keep going. But if I start right when the sun goes down and I'm thinking, oh my God, what do those words have to do with whatever music I'm going to think of? I have to put words, I have to music to that. I mean, like, and then the brain starts to slow down. So that's why the light really helps. But when I'm in the role, then then I can't go to bed, and afterwards, like this morning, after, I still had the music just was going around in my head. So it's fun. That's the good thing. It's fun. um and you just have to go with, your experience. I mean, not your experience, but your feelings of the clock. You know what I mean? um I know that there are certain times, like, especially students, they have so much work. Okay, you Berklee students, I know why you do it. It's because the music courses are like 1 credit or something. And really everybody wants it to be the opposite way, so they take a lot of music classes, and therefore, really are enjoying it because they're going to school for music, but then they have so much stuff to go on their plate. But anyway, with that comes responsibility to finish the work. And that's a responsibility for your study, for yourself, for your teachers, and also for your body. So, a lot of times, students will ask me, how do I organize my practice time? You know, and for me, because I do too much, it is sometimes, I would say, overwhelming, because really, to practice, a noted classical guitar teacher, after giving me, unnamed, master class, or during the master class on the stage, said something like, well, you're going to have to give up that jazz stuff, because you can't be a classical perf- like a real classical performer if you're doing other things. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, well, anyway, so I'm on the periphery, in at least in terms of that teacher. But what I do, is I practice 4 things. And if you are a student, you have 8 classes. That's what you practice for. You know what I mean? When your summer comes, then you might want to be all, in a meditative, balanced way of just, oh, I'm going to do these things and those things and those things, and balance it and practice for 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening. You know what I mean? The stuff that students never get to do, and they always say, oh my gosh, I might have to take a semester off so I can practice. And so that's what I did. So if I had a classical concert, I would be practicing the classical music. And of course, I had studied for my whole life, so I had a background. It wasn't like I just picked it up and started practicing it. But if I needed to have a recording, project, and I needed a project done, written stuff, that was what I do. Um, but in my bigger picture, especially for jazz musicians, is to play the song, and that will teach you everything, because everything is in the song, and everything that you have to do, in the performance of the song, is, your basics, scales and arpeggios and chords and phrasing and sound. Um, and you could practice the whole song for 32 bars. You can practice 2 chords from one to the next, one to the next, one to the next, then the next to the next, the next to the next, the next to the next, until they starts to feel comfortable. But and I've lived with some, well, one great guitarist, because I only had one roommate in my life, and that was Peter Bernstein. And I know Pete has practiced lots of stuff, and studied with lots of people, like with, um, you know off and on with Barry Harris, and Ted Dunbar, and other teachers. Uh, well, uh, he he had a great time with Jim Hall, and then Gene Bertoncini, one of my teachers. But anyway, the point is, we used to play tunes. That's what we did. Right, Cheryl? Didn't we play tunes? Actually, Cheryl, you practiced more than me, I'm sure. So let me not ask you that question. I don't want to embarrass myself. But I played tunes, and I figured out, what I needed to do to play those tunes. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then in my book, I would write down what it is. So because the main thing about this book, sorry to take a long time answering your question, is that it's about you. It's about you. Everything that you do goes in there. So it's like a diary. And so I have them going back 30, 40 years. And the other year, actually in my Dreamscape CD, there's a recording that I did of a great Charlie Hayden song called Forturia. And I decided to put it out 10 years or more after, 15 years more after it was recorded. So I put that out, and then a great student of mine, Ian, who he transcribed it, right? And the cool thing was, I went back and I found, because it was basically spontaneous composition, but I practiced lots of things. I said, this song is only 8 measures, you know what I mean? And the song, is long. The performance of it is long. So what I did, I just went through those 8 measures. I played it a million times, and I wrote down everything that I liked, and then I had no memory of this. I found it, the workbook, and I gave it to him, and I showed him, and so it helped him do the transcription. One of the reasons was because I really went through about 20 ideas, and then I wrote them down in numbers. Like, so, okay, I'll start with that one. That's 1. That's 2. Okay, that's 2A because it's kind of related, and that's 2B, and then I'll go to 3. And so I went all the way up to 10, whatever it was, and I had my form of my composition, and so it was great to find that after 15 years, having forgotten that's how I did it. You know what I mean? So anyway.
I just want to say before Cheryl responds to that that's so similar to the way we learn this heavy classical repertoire, right? Like we've done through Yale these master classes with great people, one of whom is Seymour Bernstein, who wrote this amazing book called With Your Own Two Hands. He's a pianist. And he had this way of, working on music and memorizing it, where you do exactly that, where you like kind of chop up the piece into phrases and you memorize each phrase and play them out of context and play them back in context and go back and go chord to chord and this to this. And it's great to hear that your compositional process and your learning of other styles, that's a transferable skill, right?
Yeah, no, it is definitely. And by the way, I just want to say that student was Carl Marino, who did
Yeah.
the
He's another great classical and jazz player and an island string player.
Yeah, it was great working with him when he was a student at Berklee, and yeah, inspiring because he's a monster on the guitar, and yeah.
Yeah. Freddie, you mentioned your parents earlier, and they were great musicians, your parents. And growing up in a musical environment, like, what do you think? Can you put your finger on now some things that just being around them sort of instilled in you as a musician?
Well, I got to hear lots of vocal lessons. My father was a pianist, but he was also my mother's vocal coach from when she was young, and even while I found after both of them died, little notebook, I mean the size of my hand, which had all of the repertoire that he was coaching my mother on, all the German lieder, all the Italian arias and the French chanson, the Russian lullabies and the Yiddish lullabies and Spanish Civil War songs and spirituals, of course, and also musicals from the American tradition. And so, so that was really amazing to see the organization of my father just saying, okay, well, we don't have enough of Schubert. Let's get more Schubert. Let's, you know what I mean? And to build the repertoire. And so I would come home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or maybe 4 o'clock after my guitar lesson. You know what I mean? And I played the guitar and I played the piano many, many times and quit it many times because I think it was my father's instrument, but the guitar seemed to be something he couldn't correct me on. So anyway, so I would come home and I would just hear them working, on phrasing and sound and relaxation and embouchure or mouth, tongue and loose jaw. And I mean, I really got a lot of that. And also my debut was at 6 years old, turning pages for my father in town hall in New York. So my brother, who was 35 years older than me, that's another story. But anyway, being 41 years old, said, Dad, I'm kind of busy, like I can't do this concert. So that's town hall. I'm sorry, I'm busy, like, so, okay, I got another son. so,
And
so
that's
he,
a stressful gig. Turning pages is like that.
oh,
I have never in my life been more nervous than when
oh,
I'm
my
a page turner.
oh, the worst is when it falls in the pianist's lap. Oh my God.
Or knowing when to go,
Well,
especially.
okay. This is the story. So after the concert, one of my father's students came up to him and to me on the street. I remember being on the street outside the town hall, and he said, "Freddie, you did such a good job. You turned the pages exactly when your father nodded." And I looked at my father and I said, "You don't have to nod. I know when to turn the pages." I was so mad. Don't do that, Dad. And he said, but you don't understand, Freddie. I nod to every page turner because sometimes I want to see the last note, but sometimes I want to see the next page. So it's not an insult, But at the time, I could read Auf den Main eine kleine Nacht, I said, oh, time to turn the page, Or I could see high notes or low notes, or I could see rests. I couldn't really read it's hard for me at the moment. But anyway,
So we'll give you a break.
anyway, so that's what I could see what was going on the page, you know what I mean? And then a lot of busy, crazy, fast notes, or big whole notes, But anyway, so that's what so I was really connected with the music that way, and they were open. they liked me playing blues, and they liked me playing anything. But my first record they gave me was Segovia and Carlos Montoya. And then I remember when I was 13, my father gave me the score to the Concerto de Aranjuez with a baton, a huge baton, so I could practice conducting. And I loved it. I would play that record all the time. Actually, it was Pepe Romero all the time. Boom, boom, boom. I would just like wave that baton around, look at the, da, 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 oh my gosh, I love it. I'm getting goosebumps. But so that's, but they also would give me, what I wanted. So Christmas, I got to be there. Got to be there, like Michael Jackson, Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder. I got all these records that I wanted, you know what I mean? And eventually I started to get into jazz, and I had a classical guitar teacher, another person who gave me classical one week and jazz another week. Hey, Cheryl, I guess I took private, So, I mean,
I'm laughing because she relates to a lot of this, including probably being a page turner.
were you a page turner?
A rough gig, yeah. I come from a family of church organists, so it's a,
Oh,
it's a terrifying gig, actually.
yeah, that's my father was a church organist and
Well,
played.
I bet if we got into it, because my grandmother was a New Yorker. That's my growing up. I spent my time in New York, so they were probably in the same guild of organists in New York City.
Yeah, yeah,
That would be wild.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
crazy.
I mean, if you can turn pages under pressure, you can do anything. That's how I feel about life. Oh my.
Well,
So Ian, I know you have a lot on your mind, but there's also a question you usually ask, and I'm wondering if you want to tie that into what you might be thinking about.
I did my
Yeah. So here's a question that we ask everybody on this, and you've kind of touched on a little bit of it, but what's something that students should be thinking about or should be asking their teachers that they might not think to ask or that might not be on their radar?
Well, I did some research on your coffee talk. So I'll try to be prepared with this. It's a question that is a hard one to answer because after teaching for so many years, you seem like you've been asked everything. How can I play like Eddie Van Halen? How can I be like this? How can I be like that? How do I get my picking hand better with the pick, or should I use hybrid, or should I, put it down? Should I put it in? All these kind of technical questions. Those technical questions are always important, and especially everyone has their own individual technical questions. So obviously everybody's a different person. But I think the biggest thing that gets lost sometimes in the hecticness of lessons and life is the big picture. So, what is the story? What is the meaning? What is the context of what I'm doing as a guitarist? Not, oh, I have to do this exercise, I have to do that exercise. What are you going to put that into? Be creative. Uh, um, Great, you got the exercise, but now you have to compose or improvise a solo, or you have to compose a piece, or you have to be in a band and be part of that. So I think that's really the magical thing about music. I mean, I know that there are people much better than me with all the technical aspects and every every possible way of playing something, in the Mick Goodrick big huge book kind of thing. You know what I mean? This is the book I'm talking about. It's whatever you put in it, and then when you put something in it, then that's where you are, and you have to push yourself up from there. So you can get crazy exercises and put it in there, then that will be you. You know what I mean? Um, Obviously, you can do this without a book, but for me, I think it helps to have something down. But anyway, so when I get really excited is when people probably start putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and there's something that comes out of that. So uh, yeah, so it's a very general answer and a very general question, but every music and every performance and every style has that to be answered before you go up there on the stage. Because nobody, I mean, well, let me not say that. A lot of people like to hear people play exercises. You know what I mean? Because it's impressive, but you gotta put it somewhere and make a statement. So sometimes I like to whittle it down to one chorus, play one chorus. You know what I mean? Stop. You know what I mean? Record it. Listen to it tomorrow. whatever it is, play another chorus separate, you know what I mean, and listen to it tomorrow, or the next week, and you know that will teach you a lot, because some people would only get the bridge to take a solo on. Like, for instance, the great Lonnie Smith, who I got to play with in college. I got him to come up to Amherst College and play a quartet gig with me, with Bob Franceschini and Fuku Tainaka. And I was just, 20 or something like that. And it was amazing. But, back in the old days, especially on a record, George Benson was the star. He would play a solo, Ronnie Cooper play a solo, and then maybe, you get 10 bars to play on the bridge or something like that, on the organ, so you have to make your statement and have to say something. And just one last quote on that. When I was, at the same time, I was hanging out uptown in Harlem in Showman's and Dudes and, all these places in Harlem where I met Lonnie. I also met Tommy Turrentine. And Tommy Turrentine, the trumpet playing brother of Stanley Turrentine.
Pittsburgh. I knew him in Pittsburgh.
Oh, wow. You knew him.
Yeah. He's a
Yeah,
guy.
exactly. And he was hanging out. And so I think he taught me a word that was a Lester Young Prez term. And it was vaunts. Vaunts. So he said, Freddie, man, sometimes you just gotta vaunts it. Just play one note or two notes. Put up, bop. Just leave it. That's your statement, and then maybe after that you come in with something else. But start out vaunts. And I said, vaunts? Yeah, man, vaunts. So
I love
me of Steve Slagle always. That's it.
Does he say?
Yeah, that's his word.
That's his word too. He probably has a different definition for it, because I only heard it that once, except for probably heard Steve say it. That I did, because I hung around with him, but I didn't notice it. I'm gonna ask him next time and say, who taught you that, and what does it mean? Because it was like one of those things where he couldn't tell me what it mean. He could just explain kind of, it's an attitude, it's an approach, it's a statement, so amazing.
We've covered so much ground, and Cheryl, I'm wondering if there's one more thing on your mind as we're kind of coming to the hour.
Well, what really struck me is, because again, we've had this conversation about writing in the book and creating your book, making your book, and I found that really interesting, that story about finding your father's book.
Oh yeah, that's
true. Like, you're just, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say.
Yeah, well, luckily I don't collect New York Times, Sunday New York Times for the 50 years and have them hoarded up in the whole bedroom.
Yes, that's a good. Yes, that's
that.
good.
That was because he always circled the article that he was eventually going to cut out of the paper, but never got to cut them out, and so that was a little bit of a a family issue. But anyway, yeah, no, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But and my mother, I guess, I heard her sing so many times. Actually, my father sang me lullabies. My mother was the singer, but my father sang us the lullabies, and I guess that was his thing. But really, I'm really happy now to be writing lyrics for the first time and having them come, alive, actually. It's a hard process, but because my mother sang in 7 languages and I only understood 1, I really did not pay too much attention to the lyrics. Now, when I heard them singing, sometimes I feel like a motherless child. I would get a lump in my throat, you know what I mean? When I was turning the pages, you know what I mean? So I can understand. I mean, I do listen to lyrics, but because of that, I kind of went. And my brother, my older brother, was a classical composer, studied with me, and so I heard all kinds of weird classical 12-tone music and operas, and that he wrote, and so that was like kind of a big, so that's what I'm saying, like I would hear all this music, but I wouldn't necessarily concentrate on the vocals and the lyrics, but it's really a wonderful thing. Let me cut it short.
Ian, what about you? What's on your mind here?
Well, I mean, I think as we're coming to the end of this, I don't know. I'm just gonna take your advice and write things down a lot more. You know, Finale's really easy to use for me, making charts and writing down written notes. But I feel like getting back into just you know, writing out the dots. I could
Okay.
do that a lot more.
Okay, I'm gonna wing it on this one. But last night, my wife was in a screenwriters class, and the teacher has didn't develop this app, but there is an app that she uses, and you type. It's like something called like the most dangerous writing app ever. You type, and if you stop for 5 seconds, it erases everything you've typed. So basically, just get into time yourself 15 minutes. I'm just going to write. I'm just going to write. Just keep it going. Just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. And then stop it, then it won't erase it. You know what I mean? But a lot of times you get into this picture, this mindset where you can't write until it's perfect. And then you can't really get anything perfect until you put it down there and then realize that you need to change things. So that was also something, again, a Yale thing. I took a classical composition course at Yale, and the guy was a composer. Like, we're musicians, we're performers, and we write. But this guy was a composer. He said, every day I open my drawer and I take out and I write. I might throw it in there, I might never use it, but I write every day. And 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 what happens? I'll find something that I wrote, and I'll be able to use it next year. And so it's like a muscle in your brain. If you don't do it, you can psych yourself out. You can have mental blocks and writer's block because you're over analyzing and over critiquing yourself. So just do it.
That's, that's great advice. I want to go back to my old notebooks now and look at them. And I love that idea that your notebook is where you're at, and you can really embrace that.
Yeah. And then you look at the old ones and you say, I forgot half of that stuff.
I also want you to know that I specifically brought this coffee mug today. It looks like a rocket ship. It's from NASA, the Space Center,
Amazing.
and it says rocket fuel on it. And I brought it in your honor because I knew that there's going to be a lot happening in this hour. So thank you, Freddie.
Thank
You
you.
go back and listen to this one for sure. Good ideas, like how to bring a lot of things together. And I think it's really good to have this conversation as so many students and faculty are thinking about coming back after the pandemic with all of these innovative ideas and a little apprehensive maybe about what might meet us, but excited at the same time. So good luck, everyone, like getting ready to pull things together.
Yeah.
And we'll see a lot of you on campus soon. We'll see you, Freddie, soon. So enjoy
Yeah.
the island.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian, as usual. Cheers. Thank you, Cheryl. Cheers. And cheers, Freddie Bryant. And
Next time I'll have my proper Berklee cup. It's one I didn't put in my suitcase. I'm sorry.
That's okay, and we'll clink them together. Well, over tacos or something.
Well, it's safe. It's safe at home.
That's great. All right, everyone, have a great
Okay.
week, and we'll see you on the next coffee talk.
Thank you.